Welcome to the Digital Planning Podcast. This series is designed to educate individuals about all things digital in connection with estate planning, business planning, and estate and trust administration. To keep up with all things digital, please subscribe to iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you download your podcasts. And now, Jennifer Ziegel, a partner at Kleinbard LLC, Ross Brook, a principal at Estate Genie, and Justin Brown, a partner at Ballard Spahr LLP, with today's topic.
Welcome back to the Digital Planning Podcast. I'm your host, Jen, and I'm here with my co-hosts, Justin and Ross, and we have a very special guest today, Cody Barbo, CEO and co-founder of Trust and Will, which is a leading online estate planning platform that makes it simple and affordable for families to create wills, trusts, and other basic estate planning documents throughout the nation. Some of our listeners may remember that Cody was previously on the podcast back in July of 2021. Cody, welcome back. We are thrilled to have you on the show today and are so excited to learn about the evolution of Trust and Will.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Excellent. So since your last appearance in 2021, what have been some of the biggest milestones for Trust and Will?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy to think back. I mean, because we're coming up on 8 years as a company. So you got to meet halfway in our journey, and where we are today is we've helped now over 1 million families with their estate plans in all 50 states. The business has 115 people spread across the country working hard every day to make estate planning affordable and accessible. And the biggest evolution is how we go to market. So when we met 4 years ago, most of our marketing was direct to consumer, and it still is today. I don't know if any of your listeners have seen the TV commercials or have heard us on radio or a podcast, not a recorded podcast like this, but in advertising a podcast, the readouts that hosts do. And even search is a huge driver for us. Even influencers, which is crazy to think, is a big driver for us. But where we've shifted tremendously is with large partnerships. So 40% of the business and growing is through big banks, life insurance companies, through the employer benefits channel, working with broker-dealers, RAs, nonprofits around planned giving. And a new product we get to talk to you guys about today is we have an estate attorney product experience that we're going to be rolling out. So I get to tease that out to you and your listeners. But it's been a really fulfilling business. I mean, we're generating tons of revenue. We're a B Corp, a proud B Corp and public benefit corporation, so very mission aligned. And we'll talk a little bit about e-wills and the digital execution throughout the podcast today. But I think in 21, it was maybe just a few states that you could digitally sign your estate plans. Today, that's now 15 states plus DC. We're going to be investing quite a bit of capital for 2026 and beyond. That also has a coalition behind it of our peers in the space to try to get more states to adopt digital execution until we're at all 50. So just a really fulfilling time in the business and in life. I've had another kid after we last talked. So I have 2 kids now.
Well, congratulations on the expansion of your family and 1 million estate plans. That is remarkable. That is such a needed service for so many people in the country. And it's just wonderful that you provide the technology to really facilitate that. So big congratulations. So when you were on the show before, you had described your, kind of typical user in an estate plan. And what does that look like now? How has that changed?
It's still very much the same. I mean, we started this company for the families that don't know to create estate plans. They can't afford the estate attorney. And it's unfortunate that even with our 1 million plus estate plans we've created, the statistic is still pretty much the same. 70% of families don't have estate plans. But the fact that we've gotten 1 million people to do it, let alone do it online, is really something that we're proud of. But it's still that kind of sandwich generation, 30 to 55, anywhere from a couple 100,000 to a couple million of assets. Generally, kids is the biggest trigger, but also aging parents or even the empty nesters. There's so many folks who are dropping kids off, at least at my network, dropping kids off at college the last 2-3 years. And we even launched a young adult plan for the healthcare proxies. So the young adults, kids, mom and dad, it's still their kids, their baby, but they have an option to get the healthcare docs in place in case something were to happen to them. So the same audience for the same reasons, 4 years later since we spoke, but 8 years since the founding of the company. And we started it for ourselves. I couldn't afford the estate attorney. So I looked for online solutions, didn't find one that we liked. And that's what led to the inception of Trust and Will.
So I have to ask you now, because you mentioned it in the beginning as a teaser, tell us about this new product that you're rolling out.
The one for estate attorneys?
Yes.
Yeah. So I laugh as I answer this because I remember in like the early years, like the first 2 years, people kind of dunked on us for like, being another LegalZoom and just, brushing us off. Like, you guys are going to fail. You're going to have all this, unauthorized practice of law complaints. We've just played a very conservative approach to how we built the business. And one of our first attorneys that we hired was practicing for ultra high net worth. And the reason why he had joined the company was how many families he turned away, because they couldn't afford the firm. They didn't have the minimum assets as a criteria to work with them. And I was like, well, how many firms are turning people away today? But we knew early on we wanted to work with attorneys. We had launched our first attorney in California, the home state of the business, back in 2019. And today we have 350 attorneys in all 50 states that customers, if they choose not to they can go start to finish on their own in 30 minutes or less with the platform. But if they want to talk to an attorney, they have a family dynamic they want to run through, maybe a tax implication, that attorney network is there as a backstop. We charge $299 retail to the customer to choose to work with that attorney. And it's been an incredible process for us to recruit that many people who want to work with us. They're pro Trust-a-Mill. They believe in what we're doing, believe in the mission. But I think that the integrity of the documents has only gotten better. And we're constantly leveraging that attorney network to take the next step. If the client isn't able to be served by Trust-a-Mill, say they need a special needs trust or an irrevocable trust set up, that is the handoff that we can feel proud of, that we didn't turn someone away just because they had more complex needs, opposite to the gentleman that we had recruited back in the early days. The piece that I'm really proud of too is, we're trying to push the envelope. It's the digital execution, which we'll talk more about, but this opportunity to really change the way, the perception of an industry and how it thinks about estate planning, that it can be done safe and secure online and at scale. That's both for existing attorneys to have a tool, which I'll get to your question as I tee this up. And with so many attorneys that we're using, that we have in the network, they were starting to hack our financial advisor tool. So a tool for financial advisors that tens of thousands of financial advisors use to bring their clients into our estate planning ecosystem. And we noticed a unique use case where some of them were like hacking it to send links to prospective clients, which they could create an estate plan with Trust-a-Mill. They could track their progress. Has Cody started his estate plan, finished it? Does he need help funding his trust? And we're like, oh, it's an interesting use case. Like, do attorneys just want a tool that gives them like a digital interface for their clients that they can also use our AI assistant or our AI doc ingestion to create a summary snapshot? We have bulk doc upload, average attorneys working with 1,000 to 3,000 clients throughout their career. So like, not like copy paste, but like a close to carbon copy of that for estate attorneys. And we did a similar product rollout about a month ago for plan giving professionals at nonprofits. But this estate attorney tool will launch later this quarter. So for those listening, Q3 2025, later in the quarter. And we announced it earlier this year, but we have hundreds of estate attorneys already lined up, ready to use it. And it'll be very simple functionality. We're not trying to take business away from these attorneys. These will be attorneys outside of our ecosystem. But it's the ability to take the best-in-class AI that we've built, allow them to upload existing client docs, ask it questions. It's just much more interactive than having those conversations with colleagues or even with the family itself. They can almost do these scenario role playings with the tool. It's really cool.
One of the things that you said was, since the last podcast, you've really been partnering with more entities or more people to develop trust and will. Can you talk a little bit about what those partnerships look like and how that has expanded trust and will?
Yeah. So look, we have the largest wealth transfer in history happening over the next 20 years. When we started the company in 2017, the number that was being marketed was 60 to 70 trillion. The latest numbers that are coming out is 124 trillion. So it's almost doubled, right? Just in the last 7 years. That is wealth that has grown in the United States, and that's wealth that's flowing into the United States. So almost half of all the wealth transfer in the world will happen here over the next 20 years. And for these financial service companies, it's the same pitch, kind of like the same pitch we've given to consumers, where I would ask the question to bank leadership and say, hey, how many, like a morbid question, but how many of your customers pass away every year? What does it represent from an AUM? How much of that AUM do you retain? None of them can answer it. They're starting to worry about it now because the death rate is going up. The peak of wealth transfer will hit in 2038. And a lot of Gen 2 or Gen 3 clients, kids or grandkids of clients, are not sticking with mom and dad or grandma, grandpa's firm. They're going to the firm down the street. So when these firms are prioritizing estate planning, and we're always trying to just be the best option in their menu, we still encourage them, hey, you still recommend the attorneys you work with for your private bank or wealth management segments. You can recommend a Trust-a-Mill for that kind of retail to mass affluent, or they can just choose to figure it out on their own. They go find an attorney or they find another online tool, or what most people do is just don't do it. So to incentivize the end client, generally the end client, to do it, these often will come with a discount or a complimentary estate plan. So one that we're really proud of is with Fifth Third Bank. So last quarter, Fifth Third Bank rolled out a free will program to their 4 million banking customers. So I think the prerequisite is you have to have at least a checking account relationship with Fifth Third. And the goal is to get as many people through the door as possible. And they're so committed to the marketing. They're doing billboard campaigns, in-branch advertising, ATM campaigns. Their CEO, Tim Spence, did a readout in their earnings call. I mean, they're all in on it. And it's not like this initial pop and then it fizzles out. It is consistent marketing throughout the year. And what's fascinating to both us and Fifth Third Bank is that a lot of those customers are upgrading to trust. So if you might come in for a free will offer, but you're upgrading to a trust, you have assets now. So it's an amazing asset discovery opportunity for these banks and for their wealth managers or for their bankers to interface with the clients in a way that they maybe only ever treated them for a checking account relationship. So we're doing this with a lot of large firms. We have some really big names that we'll be announcing through the end of the year. A handful of those will be at our own. We have a conference coming up in late October. It's called Generations. It'll be our own first hosted conference in partnership with Financial Times. And we have keynotes and fireside chats with some of our partners and stakeholders that will talk through the case studies and successes they've seen. And it's really an event for the industry. So to answer your question directly, the banks want to retain that AUM. And when they prioritize estate planning, they can create a really nice retention strategy because we're helping them on the planning side, not on settlement. But that's just the natural evolution, I think, of where we'll head with them. But it's really nice to get the buy-in because they really didn't care about this, honestly. Like the first 3-4 years we were building the company, they're like, estate planning is interesting. Pandemic happened, a lot more interesting. And now that this wealth transfer is real, it's front and center, they are at risk of losing quite a bit of their AUM to their peers just because they don't prioritize it. So that's kind of how we narrate it with them and get the partnerships in motion.
So you mentioned AI a few moments ago, and I have a few questions about that. But primarily, I'm surprised that we haven't seen the market flooded with startups who are advertising, get your AI will here. And so, but to that extent, I've also been surprised that we haven't seen a lot of competitors come on board either, because when we last talked in 2021, I thought there would be a lot of copycats, but clearly there's a larger barrier to entry than perhaps I thought. Do you have any thoughts on why we haven't seen as a market either of those entries mass scale?
It's interesting. So when we started in 2017, we're recognized for the success we have today, but we were a really small company back then. I mean, we had no customers when we started the business. And when we launched in 2018, we launched our first beta, which was just a last will and testament in Texas and California. LegalZoom had been at it for, I think, 15 years at the time. Rocket Lawyer was just doing wills. You had freewill.com, who still exists today. They have scale. They're at significant scale, but they sell through the plan giving space. You had willing.com, who sold to MetLife after like a seed round. And then Tomorrow, who had raised through Series A, who sold to Ethos Life Insurance. That was it. And there's maybe 2 or 3 others that like maybe had a little bit of funding, just tracked them through Google Alerts, but like never scaled, period. And then the second wave came over the last 4 years, which is on the wealth management side. So I just got back from Future Proof in Huntington Beach, which is like a forward-thinking wealth tech conference where you have all these technology providers meeting with financial advisors. And there's 9 of us now selling through the wealth management channel. So there's Trust-A-Mill, Vanilla, Wealth.com, Luminary, Estately, which is a spin-out brand from FreeWill. There's Encore Estate Plans, Estate Guru, Snug, FastWill, that's mine, and us, which is wild. But even with all of us together in that channel, and 3 or 4 of us combined have raised like almost $400 million cash, like real capital. How is the next startup that's starting today going to compete with that amount of cash? Like we have a business that's in the tens of millions of revenue. It's got tens of millions of cash on the balance sheet from our last cap raise. And we're spending tens of millions of revenue or tens of millions of marketing dollars every year to run the TV ads, to go through the paid search campaigns, the influencer campaigns, radio, podcasts. And then we're investing millions of dollars of team time into this go-to-market through business development. It's not that we can't be beat. We saw LegalZoom and we're like, yeah, we can beat them. But it's just the investors tend to pick a market winner or market winners. And there's 2 or 3 of us that are very well funded right now at revenue scale. So it's letting the market shake out of who's going to be the unicorn, who's going to be the IPO story. And we hope that's Trust-A-Mill over the next 3 to 5 years. We want to take this company public and keep building it. And that for us creates the opportunity, not forces us to acquire our competitors, but if it creates a better narrative and we can consolidate and grow faster together, that's why I try to be friendly with all the peers in our space, that we could hack our way to $1 billion company very quickly, or to an IPO much quicker. And that's what keep your friends close, enemies closer. Like they're all in it for the right reasons. They want to make estate planning accessible. We just target different audiences at the end of the day.
Great answer. That explains a lot. As you may know, we had David Barnard from Luminary on as a guest in our last session. So let me turn then to AI for trust and will. How do you see AI reshaping how you work with your customer base and or the attorneys that are going to use your platform?
Yeah, so I'll give the context as to why we've really redefined ourselves as an AI first company. And when I had my second kid last summer, we took the full 6-week pat leave. And besides being tired, because we also had a 5-year-old and a dog, and not a lot of free time, but I just became obsessed with AI. I was like, how are these companies raising so much money, getting such crazy adoption? Like my dad, who's 80 years old, was using ChatGPT to like create funny images for my kids. Like it's here. And it was like an adapt or die moment in my head, that if we do not reorient our entire thinking at a board level, at a C-suite level, leadership team, whole company, tops down, bottoms up, to AI first, AI native, at least in how we think, we can still be somewhat practical with reality. But if we think that way, we will stay ahead of the curve versus the company who it's like founded. I tell this to the team all the time. It's like an ex OpenAI early engineer who's like, I'm going to go do Trust and Will AI, and I'm going to get $50 million from Sequoia or Andreessen, and I'm going to go recruit all my former colleagues from ChatGPT or Perplexity, fill in all the blank AI companies. And they just accelerate go to market because these AI companies are hitting 100 million run rates in a year's time. It's just insane. Now the brand, that's why we've always invested in the brand. We want people to know who Trust and Will is, that it's a safe place to create an estate plan online. That's why we borrow the brand equity of all these partners. But AI was like, we looked at it through the client lens first, that like we're very consumer centric at Trust and Will. So like, what does the everyday family need that's going to be beneficial? Because if they benefit from it, the stakeholders around them, the professionals, the advisor, the plan giving officer, the estate attorney, they can also benefit from a lot of the similar functionality. So we took this platform strategy that we've been building towards, and we branded it Estate OS, which we launched earlier this year. The consumer side is just very simple functional. I'll explain it simply for the listeners, a lot of technology behind it. So things like the AI assistant, being able to log in and ask your estate plan any question with the exact context of what's in your documents and hundreds of thousands of estate plans that we've created. Those are anonymous answers that we pull in with expert content behind it. A year ago, I had to log in, look up in the guardian section, who are the guardians to my 2 kids. I can log in my dashboard today and have an instant answer. Mom and dad, mother-in-law, second is my brother-in-law and my brother. And I could change right there, like in real time. It's fascinating how quick you can get relevant, accessible information based on a 40 to 80 page document without having to think about it. Like that's a $500 invoice from your attorney, right? So I love that. And it's really a value add to our members. We have a thing called Plan Strength that we launched. Think of it like a credit score for your estate plan. So if you've created a will, that's great. But if you haven't executed the documents, you're going to probate. And even if you've executed the will, you're still going to probate. So if you've got a trust, you've signed it and executed the trust, but you haven't funded the trust, assets are still going to probate. So we have this kind of very simple red, yellow, green kind of credit score system, like a Credit Karma, that gives the client, the consumer, the relevant information to always keep their estate plan up to date. It has a goal and action plan backing that, which is really cool. So if you're planning to start a family, or you're planning to buy your first home, or planning to move from California to Texas like I did, you can get ahead of it, of what's expected and what updates you need to make to keep that estate plan up to date. So we're at this stage now where we have so many people that are creating estate plans with us. That's amazing. We have a lot more people who are updating their legacy estate plans. Like my own parents, they did a attorney drafted plan 20 years ago. And when they moved out to Texas, they updated it through Trust and Will. And you don't have to interface with the human in any of this stuff. But you know what? We really love the human-centric approach that we take. So 5 days a week, human support, 350-person attorney network. So there's always that 2 layers of backstop behind the AI. Humans that are direct W-2s of our team, or the actual state attorneys themselves in the states that the clients reside in. So I think that AI complements the consumer and the professionals at the end of the day. And we've got a whole bunch of functionality. The doc ingestion, being able to take an old PDF copy of an estate plan, load it up, ask it a question, make that the reason why you update your estate plan after 10, 15 years have passed. And the same functionality for consumer that I've shared with the listeners and you guys, it applies to the financial advisor who's managing 100 to 150 clients, or in the estate attorney tool we're going to roll out, who maybe they have historically 1,000 clients. They don't even have to think. I haven't seen Cody in 10 years. I can pull up his estate plan, ask it a question, and have a really proactive conversation with him around his planning needs. And I think that is the future of most industries. But for us, that's how we look at it. It's very simple, always through the client lens first. And the ability to predict life events is another fun one. So we've got, it's like a little creepy, but like this life events engine that we're rolling out that like will know to some extent if you got married, bought a house, died, had a kid. You can find a lot of data about all of us now. It's creepy. Good. We use it for good reasons. Like people out there use it for nefarious reasons. But we're like, if we knew that Cody had a kid June 22nd last year, we should probably nudge him like, hey, you want to update Guardians for your son in real time? Because I was coming out of a 6-week lack of sleep slumber, right? To remember to update my estate plan. So I love that because it's for those life triggering events, which is how we take a playful approach in our TV commercials to get people back into the system, but also for advisors and nonprofits and for estate attorneys, hopefully helps the experience at the end of the day.
That's very, very interesting. Yes, definitely a little bit creepy, but that lends me to have to ask, in general, security and privacy are always top concerns with estate planning. But when you're layering on, tech and AI and potential hallucinations, it becomes even more highlighted. So how do you address these challenges, especially dealing with all this sensitive personal information and financial data?
Yeah, we take a very conservative approach. You got to imagine. So for the listeners, we have the direct to consumer piece. We've been mindful of UPL since the start of the company, but we also work with some of the most regulated, largest financial institutions on the planet. They want a 50 set sample doc of John Doe, Jane Does for every state. They want to do reviews of our security and all this is publicly available on the website. You scroll down to the bottom. We have our commitments to AI. We have an actual web page on the marketing site. You think of it like our 10 commandments, our promise of ethical AI. We're a B Corp, public benefit corporation. We're very intentional about this stuff. But privacy and security, the tech stack that we use, fairly ironclad for a company at our stage and size, considering if we messed up, what that would result in with our financial service partners. So we go through, from a security audit perspective, we report all this to the board on an annual cadence. We have white hat hackers. We've got the insurance policies in place. But yeah, it's like at the end of the day, like my biggest worry is like someone hacks our database and holds our data ransom. We have hundreds of billions of client data in those estate plans. Like it's really, it could be a kiss of death to the company. So we've invested in it very thoughtfully with an incredible leader, VP of Eng, who's got a whole security committee. We've got outsourced security and we do these audits now that we report on to the board. And even blocking, I think we block traffic internationally because we're US only. So we block all international traffic. I'm trying to think like we've gotten through like simulations, like true fire drills, like a real fire drill. Like you cannot access any company comms. How do you reach out to the CEO? We've got just everything from A to Z fairly buttoned up at this stage. If you would ask me this question 4 years ago, I would not have had this answer. I'd say like, we're on AWS. We've got a modern tech stack. We have 2FA, but like the layers of security that we now have to commit to and have to commit to for our partners' sake, these enterprise deals is as ironclad as it can get at this stage of the journey.
How are you using eWills as part of the platform and incorporating it into the wills that you guys produce?
Yeah. So for the listeners, when we started the company in 2017, I thought you could just DocuSign an estate plan. That seemed really obvious. You can DocuSign almost everything else in our lives. And in 2019, we did the first electronic will. So eWill, electronic will. We did the first one in Nevada. And then we sent Patrick to Anchorage, Alaska, to the Uniform Law Commission's annual meeting. And he's like, Patrick was like late 30s at the time. He's like, I was the youngest person there by a lot. And I was there to talk about eWills, which was like a foreign concept to a lot of the folks there. But he did get people excited about it. And because we'd done the Nevada one, but that led to the Uniform eWills Act, which was amazing because that's what we modeled a couple of the other states, Arizona, Indiana, and a few others off the eWills. But then we're like, well, what about the other documents? What is there like a catch-all for all estate planning documents? So then the ULC had UEPTA, the Uniform Electronic Estate Planning Documents Act. They're not marketers. That's their acronym, not ours. But that was an opportunity to bring digital estate plan execution to all docs, which now is live in Illinois and Washington. There's one more state for UEPTA. But what we've done is we've actually spent money. We have a strategy firm out of DC. We've lobbied several states. We had bills killed in 2 years ago, a year ago, we had Texas, Missouri, and Oklahoma killed. Bills were killed. But this year we had New York passed, we had Missouri passed, and we had North Dakota passed. And as we look to 2026 and beyond, we're putting up a pretty good chunk of change. And I think again, going back to the question about competitors, I try to refer to them as peers, because the peers have notoriety, they have some cash, but they have the same interest that we do, and hopefully the same interest that benefits the future of an estate attorney's practice. Is like, the client experience should be digital, and it should be just as secure, if not more secure, with this technology on the execution piece. So we have 7 states that we're going to be targeting for 2026. One of them's Texas. That'll bleed into 2027. But the goal here is to get most, if not all 50 states to digital execution in the coming years. And the company that we kind of model that potential success off of is Proof Notarize. Proof does remote online notary. They were originally called notarize.com, but they took a lot of their capital and they changed the laws. I think in 47 states today allow for remote online notary. So their business is primarily selling through real estate transactions, but we follow the RON and Rulona laws, similar with eWills and UWIPTA. So we're going to launch this coalition. We're going to have real capital. We'll be the kind of seed capital, behind it. But that seed capital will hopefully get the snowball effect rolling. And it's pretty wild to get the pushback. Like when it was being debated in New York on the floor, there's folks saying, oh, everybody has access to an attorney. Like even folks in rural parts of the state have access to an attorney. We're like, they don't have access. They can't afford the attorney. And the execution of this online requires video. It requires a recorded session. It can be used as evidence in a court of law. And there's a handful of platforms that do this now. There's Proof, there's One Notary, there's Blue Notary. DocuSign has their own notary tool through their Live Oak acquisition. So you have DocuSign, at least, is the most reputable example. DocuSign is accepted in almost every industry today globally. So having a company like that say, hey, we also want to serve customers with this digital execution, estate planning just feels like it's like the final frontier. And luckily, we have the size, revenue scale, and cash to be able to invest in it. But we tried this a couple of years ago, tried to get some bigger names that I'll leave out who might join us in this journey now at this time. That I was like, hey, why don't you match our spend? There wasn't urgency back then. Now there's urgency because it's a real win. It's a win for the industry and it's a win for consumers.
I guess the question I have is how do you guys utilize electronic wills and electronic execution? Are all of your documents e-signable if the jurisdiction permits it?
Yeah. So in a handful of states, not all 15, in 5 or 6 of the states, we have it. So it's basically a handoff to proof.com where you do, it's almost, think of it like a Zoom call with DocuSign built in, like for the listeners who haven't done a digital notary experience. You do the video call, you show valid form of ID. There's a document exchange between TrustMill and Proof's platforms. So they do the digital stamp, digital signature, and then the whole session plus the witnesses present is a recorded video if needed. But when the documents are executed, they get passed back to TrustMill to like the vault. We have a document vault, and the legally valid documents are digital. It's a PDF with notary and signature. In all 50 states, though, you can choose to print the documents at home. What most of our customers do is they choose our print and ship option. We have like beautiful packaging that we ship out the documents to the customer. It gets to their house within a week. And it's usually people print at home when they're going on a trip without their kids is the use case we see. It's like, we're going to Italy tomorrow. We don't have anything in place. And kids are with grandma, grandpa. The people that are more patient get the documents shipped to them are like, hey, we're just getting this done finally and storing it securely. We have a mobile app for iOS and Android so they can scan and upload all the documents back to the vault. Most importantly, the signature and notary blocks. And that gets stored, in perpetuity until they need to make a change again. So I tell investors it's like when Netflix did direct mail or DVDs, like that's the transition that we're making. Like when Netflix went to streaming, we're like, that's our version of Netflix and TrustMill.
I like that analogy. Out of the states that you do support the electronic will signing, how many of the customers in those states are actually utilizing that feature?
It's a lower volume today because we don't force it. So customers have the choice. There's something like the tactical physical estate plan that's still trusted. Like you go to an attorney, you get the nice 3-ring binder with the gold foil print of the Barbo family trust. There's something nice about that. So it's a choice that we can make. I think that once we get to a majority of states or some larger states, like we have Florida's passed, New York is passed but needs governor's signature. That'll probably go effective at Jan 1 is my guess. But Texas and California or a couple other top 10 states passing the laws, that's when we have a choice as a company. Say, hey, we would prefer if you did it digital. And if you want to choose to do the print and ship, I would either print at home or you pay like an extra $10 or $15 to print at home. Because ideally, we don't have a paper trail. anymore, if we're mandating that we're going to go digital execution, the goal is just to not have it's just like extra steps that people have to do that, like they don't execute their documents, they don't fund the trust. Like that's the biggest gap we're trying to figure out today. There's 100 million estate plans that were done by attorneys. How many of those are executed? How many of those were funded? And that's what the technology is able to do, is like we can run drip campaigns through email and through in-app notifications, like execute the docs. And even for today, you can go get a mobile notary with witnesses to your house same day. If you're in a big city, like I'm in Dallas, when we had our second kid, I had mobile notary with witnesses at my house within 3 hours of booking the appointment. That's when I was free. And then I uploaded the docs back to Trust to Mill. It's like getting rid of it's like the financial plans. I tell financial advisors, like, how often are you getting a physical financial plan today? Like very few clients want one, let alone have one anymore. It's all done through technology. So I feel like that's the evolution for estate planning to go digital. But it's our choice to make. We could force the digital execution. We would prefer it. But customers, we love giving them choice. That's why we built this company, is give customers choice. So they have the preference to go print the docs at home or to choose the print and ship option. They have all three available to them today.
So that's really fascinating. Kind of along those lines, let's talk about digital assets, which are becoming, bigger and bigger parts of people's estate plans, from crypto to NFTs to just online accounts, email, social media. How is Trust and Will addressing people's digital legacies?
Yeah, so a couple parts to this answer. So we have a legacy contact feature. So similar to iOS for your iCloud account, or for Google, or even Meta has this. I think even LinkedIn has it now. You can appoint a digital contact, a legacy contact. So for myself, as an example, I have my wife and my mom. Something happens to me, even though I have the physical copy of Trust and Mill at home, they can gain access to the digital version of the estate planning platform. We have, for digital assets specifically, a section to call out which assets you care about. Most people, it's like very straightforward. It's like, do you want your social media accounts memorialized or deleted from existence? Same goes with email or any other, like photos. Photos are really commonly called out. Crypto is still, I would say, I'm a tech guy, so like I would say Bitcoin has become a mainstream asset. It's got 3-4 trillion of market cap today. It's pretty much in most financial portfolios at this point. You've got 50 million accounts on Coinbase, and for wealthier families, like it's 5% allocation is pretty common to hear into Bitcoin specifically. I didn't feel like this was a need for us to go solve for. I remember our very first pitch deck back in 2017, we had a digital will product that we wanted to launch specifically for crypto. And when the crypto bubble popped in 2018, it was like having that in our deck was like a bad thing. Like VCs are like, why are you doing this crypto thing? Like crypto's dead. It was crypto winter for a while. So we're like, okay, let's just focus on estate planning as it historically has been. And in the last year, with crypto, Bitcoin specifically hitting an all-time high, my interest came back. I was like, man, how are we helping our customers? We have a lot of customers with crypto. I think 37%, 39%, up somewhere between the two. 37 to 39%, their crypto is with Coinbase. So if it's a hot wallet, it's pretty straightforward. But if it's cold storage wallet, it's totally different. So there's a company called Casa, as an example. Casa has an inheritance product. It's a multi-storage wallet solution. You have to have 3 of the 5 keys to gain access to the crypto. And they have these really tight security controls and provisions over it, because most people that are setting that up, it's not cheap, probably have at least a Bitcoin, maybe in the tens of Bitcoin or maybe in the hundreds of Bitcoins. But that company's raised venture capital. The founders become a friend. We're trying to figure out a webinar actually for this before the end of the year, because we do get asked this question a little bit more frequently, mostly from financial advisors. Interestingly enough, there's a handful of crypto companies at the last couple of advisor conferences we've gone to. But we have Learn Center articles on the website. I mean, you can link your accounts through Plaid. So if it's on an exchange like Coinbase or Kraken, it's pretty straightforward to connect the accounts. But for larger crypto positions, the Casa inheritance, there's not a lot of these companies. There's only 2 or 3 that we've come across. But there's Casa, Webacy, Bequest, and then there's a NFC card company. They're a YC company, I think, out of India, that's doing it specifically for crypto. And I always thought this might just be a partnership opportunity for us, more so than something we have to build or acquire.
So Cody, this is a question that we asked you last time. So I'm curious to see how your answer has changed. But what is your vision for estate planning in the next 5 years?
The same as it's always been. It's the most accessible and affordable it's ever been. Next 5 years, I hope we're a public company. I hope not 1 of 4 Americans has heard of Trust and Mill, as is true today, but 1 of 1. Every American's heard of us. I hope that we're helping tens of millions of families in helping them with their planning, their estate management, and maybe we get back into settlement. We'd acquired a probate business and done thousands of settlements. We put that business on pause for the short term. It's very, very complex. We're navigating 50 states with estate planning, 3,000 counties plus with probate and settlement. So, if we solve for that over the next 5 years, we continue to grow the business from a revenue perspective. I think that ultimately this company could have more international footprint. So I just coincidentally, right before this podcast, I had lunch with a friend from Nigeria, and he was like, how do I bring Trust and Will to Nigeria? And I said, well, we think about international expansion all the time. You've got up in Canada, Willful, Epilogue Wills, Estatably, Clear Estate. In the UK, you've got Belong and Fair Will. In Australia, you've got Safe Will, Willed. There's one other one in Australia. I've talked to Testamenta in Spain. I've talked to 3 in India, 1 in Japan. Like there's a lot of these starting to pop up. They're smaller companies. But I think that if we're successful enough in the United States, that global expansion to me is really the next evolution, because it has such a mission alignment with who we are, reaching the most diverse set of families. And even starting with that here in the United States, we're trying to figure out next year if we can bring a Spanish version of the platform. So you can do AI translation with human translators as a backstop to make sure that the marketing site language reads correctly, the in-app experience reads correctly, the support reads correctly. The documents ultimately would be in English, but having even Spanish as one language, let alone the next 10 most commonly spoken languages in the United States, that is aligned with our mission. We want estate planning to be inclusive and accessible and affordable. And that's even within our home country here. So it's taken a big swing. I mean, we're building out the C-suite. We've got a really robust cap table, really healthy balance sheet and business and revenue diversity. And the go-to-market with branding, our brand marketing is working. Like maybe you'll see us in a Super Bowl spot in the next 2 years as the league sponsor for the NFL or the NBA. I mean, we want everybody to think that at least there is a brand, hopefully Trust and Will, that they can go to set up their estate plan. If we're not the right fit for them, that's okay. But if we started them thinking about it way earlier rather than too late, which is what every family still deals with today, then we would have done our job and stayed true to our mission from the first conversation we had about this business. Hopefully consistent with a little bit more ambition behind that 4-year later answer.
I think it's consistent with a lot more ambition and a lot more detail. I think 4 years ago, you had broader views of where you wanted to be. And it feels like now you're so much more focused on what you want the future of Trust and Will to be.
Yeah, I think the focus part matters. I think you get, like when you're an early stage entrepreneur, like you're dreamy, you get shiny object syndrome. We filter Daniel and I's shiny object syndrome through our executive team, who keeps us accountable to our OKRs and our quarterly planning. We'll be here in Dallas. We'll be in this boardroom actually next week for 2-3 days with the exec team going through Q4 and 2026 planning. I mean, we've built a real business. We've created hundreds of millions of enterprise value through the capital that we've raised and the business we've built. And to look back in 5 years, 10 years, and to have built a generational company, like it becomes less about the money for me personally. It's really about the legacy. Like, did I be a good dad and husband to my family? Was I a good son to my mom and dad, a good brother to my brother? And was I a good leader at this company, Trust and Will? And I take a lot of ownership in that. And it feels like we're closer to it than ever before. And I think that's maybe where the focus is coming from.
So, Cody, let's dive back into estate administration for a second. And I hear you that it's a complex subject. It's really of interest to us because it's the other part of the entire strategy or project around making sure that assets are going where they're intended to go. But what did you experience and what did you find in that complexity that you mentioned before? And where do you think about it in the future?
Yeah, so for the listeners, in 2022, we acquired a company out of Vermont called Easy Probate, who was kind of the first direct-to-consumer probate business. And it was after a big capital raise. So it was like the most cash we ever had. And we did a build versus buy analysis. And we'd been keeping in touch with the founder, Byron, for 2 years up until that point. So I had a relationship with him. And we felt like our marketing chops were working, our go-to-market through partners was working. And I was like, could we run the same playbook with an acquisition, not building in-house? So we didn't have to catch up revenue. We could just take their existing revenue and accelerate it. But they were a small team. They raised a little bit of capital. There's basically 5 people running that company. 4 people came over, one of which is still here. She's Abby. She's amazing on the team, on sales ops team. And we did thousands of settlements. Now, we had a more narrow scope, right? 50 states for estate planning. We narrowed the scope down to 30 states. And it was interesting because like it takes so long. Like some of the states, it takes up 2 years. So we were testing pricing. We're trying to test pricing. We had prices ranging from like $3,000. We had like a DIY that we got rid of pretty quick. We did like a $3,000 to $8,000 tier, 3, 5, and 8. Those are the 3 tiers. This is a couple years ago now. And the $8,000 tier was the attorney quarterback tier. Like you're going to hand everything over. They're going to run the process for you. Still high gross margin on that tier, but like that sweet spot was the $5,000 package because we had high gross margin. It would be fairly profitable for us. Most of the heavy lifting was in the first month. The thing that was crazy, and this might resonate with your listeners, is stuff comes up. Family members come out of the woodworks, especially as you're getting closer to the actual like tangible asset, mostly home value or some family heirloom. And it'd be like month 6 or month 9 and shit comes up. Way more than you think. And because people want their cut of the pie, what they're left or what they thought they were supposed to be left. And we'd have to refund because it would create a complexity for us that, could lead to maybe litigation of the company, but like family members suing each other for what they think they're rightfully entitled to. And the refund rate wasn't like so crazy that we're like, oh, this is a bad business. It was still a good business. We're like, if we could figure that out, like you can't predict what people are going to do 6 to 9 months in. That would have been a pretty good business for us to keep running. So we tried a different go-to-market through large financial service partner who had, you think of big banks, they have hundreds of thousands of customers dying every year. So we're like, could we be more of a service partner to their support teams, the estate care centers of these large financial institutions? So we tried that for a little bit, but it was kind of the same thing coming up. And we're like, we could keep floating this business. We have a great team, a lot of whom are still here. We've kind of shifted them around, but we're like, do we keep investing millions of dollars into probate for like the maybe it works out? Or do we take that millions of dollars and invest it in everything that we do really well, like consumer, advisors, platform expansion into these new professionals? So that was the decision that we made. And it's interesting because there's this company called meetalex.com that has raised a pretty big Series A, like $20 million. Alexandra is the founder, CEO. And she's amazing. She's super inspiring and not only great VCs, but she got Edward Jones and Schwab to invest. So maybe a great podcast guest in the future. I can make an intro there. I hope they figure it out. So like we took a bet on it. We thought we could do it. And we didn't quit probate and settlement. We're just like putting it on pause. And that was a big lesson learned because it even come down sometimes to the judge. Judge was more right leaning or left leaning. That would create nuance. Or the documents themselves. Like we had the question we used to get asked in the early days, we didn't know yet. We're like, have any of your customers died? And we're like, oh, we don't really track that. But like, yeah, some people come to us because they are going to die and have a terminal illness. We probated a handful of our documents and they were fine, which was great. But they were consistent, right? Similar format. We control how they're structured on the back end. We control how they're structured in the actual legal lease. The other 3,800 documents were all over the place. I mean, we had some that were literally typewriter estate plans from like 60, 70 years ago to ones that hadn't been touched in 30 or 40 years to ones that were up to date and were pretty ironclad. There's just a lot of variability. So that variability was hard for us to kind of accommodate for in a like consistent ops flow. But it was an amazing, the team that ran that probate operations, incredible, like the most patient people on the planet. They also had customers going through the 7 stages of grief on calls with them. So call could be very peaceful, like, hey, mom and dad's in a better place. Like, I'm just happy that you guys are able to help get us through this. Some of those calls were our colleagues getting cursed out. Like we had people quit because they couldn't handle the pain of getting cursed out a couple times a week by a customer who literally just lost mom or dad and they need someone to vent to. A lot of sad, tender, emotional calls. I think we had a lot of team members here for the right reasons, for those conversations specifically, just to be, like a virtual shoulder to cry on as they went through this process. And people forget, this is a very human experience to go through. Everybody's going to go through it at some point. So I feel it'll be inevitable that we get back into it at some point. And maybe it's kind of like the crypto conversation with Casa. Maybe it is a partnership with Alex or a future acquisition down the line. But yeah, it's a fascinating space. We're more interested in like, what does the future of trust administration look like and what the future of trust companies look like with AI and technology. And that's kind of that's like our Horizon 3 narrative that we'll start building towards in the coming years.
That's really fascinating. And you mentioned the DIY. I don't think the layperson realizes just how difficult it is. We've all, as practicing attorneys, have experience with clients who've said, well, I could just do that myself, and then only to come back and say, no, this was way more difficult than I thought. It eliminates a lot of the problems you just mentioned of the interactions, the difficulty dealing with documents if it's all on the client. But I imagine the margins just aren't there to justify in terms of your offerings?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a timely question. I literally had a conversation today with a company called Fair Split, and this entrepreneur is helping families create asset inventory. It's pretty slick. It's an AI asset inventory tool, so it helps the families. So just like for the listener that maybe not be an estate attorney, mom and dad passes. They have 3,000 square foot home. They have all this stuff in it, and you're trying to figure out what do all they have? What's it worth? Who wants it? Who doesn't want things? And you see it in estate sale. People usually do the sticker system. There'll be like certain colored stickers of grab what you want. If it's got a green sticker, bring it to the debate table and hash it out. Why do you deserve this vase from grandma? Stickers
definitely can be moved too. I've had that.
Totally, very sneakily moved. So it's pretty cool. I'm convinced we don't have to solve for everything. Like I think maybe to the question earlier, like I think earlier on we got asked to solve for everything, or like we don't have to solve for everything. Like, let's do a few things really, really well at scale and find partners or potentially acquisition opportunities that we can work with these organizations on these more nuanced niche ideas.
Absolutely. This has been a fascinating conversation. I hope that you'll be willing to come back, and because everything's moving so quickly and your insights are really helpful to us and to our audience. So thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, it's an honor. Look, you guys are doing a great job bringing attention from so many different voices in this industry. I hope the one thing that's consistent from the last call we had to this, from the inception of the company, is like we're trying to be so intentional with being a good company, helping families. And if people want to work with us, if any of the listeners have interest to work with us, reach out to me directly on LinkedIn if they hear the podcast, because we're just trying to find good people all the time. And we've got 115, we've got this amazing attorney network. And with the estate attorney tool that we're launching, we are going to be looking for a lot of feedback. Like, it's not going to be perfect. Like, it's an MVP just to set expectations, but you all should get access to it. And it has a pretty robust roadmap behind it, but at least in the initial inception, just making sure it works, it's useful, and try to re-engage clients that an attorney hasn't talked to maybe in 10, 15, 20 years.
So our guest today was Cody Barbo, CEO and co-founder of Trust and Will. Cody, again, thank you so much for your time. The Trust and Will journey has been fascinating to watch, and we're really happy to see what you've accomplished thus far and wish you continued success in the future.
Thank you so much. Thanks all.
So on behalf of my co-hosts, Jen and Justin, this is Ross, and thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Digital Planning Podcast. We'll catch you on the next one.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Digital Planning Podcast, the podcast designed to educate individuals about all things digital in connection with estate planning, business planning, and estate and trust administration. Please subscribe to this podcast and leave us a rating or review on iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, or wherever you download your podcasts. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.